Welcome to the Mo podcast.
A place where individual stories come to life.
This is how we need to be communicating with people. This is how we support people's personal development.
It's important to speak about people believing in people.
The more you're able to let go of your limitation, the more you step into your power, your inner authentic power.
Mo, a place for me, others, everyone.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Mo Podventures podcast. You're joined by your co-host Kate. Today I'm joined by the lovely Maxine. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I will say that Maxine brings to the world a fierce softness and walks through the world with deep empathy and a creative fire that refuses to go out. And through poetry, painting, faith and community has found a way to turn her pain into meaning. And even though she says she's still figuring things out, she truly does work to show others how healing and finding light in the darkness is possible. And I would say that this episode is about what happens when we start telling the truth to ourselves, to others, through our art and out loud. And I can't wait to get stuck in. Hello, Maxine. Welcome.
Hi, Kate. Thank you for having me.
It is our pleasure. So let's get a better understanding of who Maxine is. Who is Maxine and how would you describe yourself in 3 words?
That's quite a tough one, isn't it? But I'll go with the first ones that came into my head. So multi-passionate, kind, and pretty honest, direct when I'm my real self, I think. And I think that's part of our conversation is that I'm still learning about myself. So those 3 words are what I'm picking up now.
Honesty is one of the biggest traits that I value in a person, and directness is something that I really value in a person. So. And
it's not easy in this world. I have shut down my honesty and directness a lot in my life because people's reaction to it, they don't really want the truth a lot for their own reasons. But I think so being truthful, it requires courage, strangely enough, like being really truthful. And I mean truthful as in what I've learned about it, that when truth is spoken, it kind of has to involve love with it. So it has to be done with kindness. It's not about the kind of brutal truth that people can use to pull other people down in some way.
Definitely. And it expands on what we were just saying about people not wanting to leave their comfort zones. And having the truth can feel sharp and make people feel uncomfortable.
It's done it for me as I've learned more about myself. There are truths I don't want to acknowledge or haven't wanted to because it's painful. And sometimes we don't want to feel that in the moment. So I'm not saying I'm always truthful. I'm definitely not. And I don't always want truth. But I'm seeking to want more truth.
We're not always ready to hear the truth.
No. Yeah, and I think for me it's about what's the truth based on. So we hear a lot of things about personal truth, but I believe there's one kind of foundational truth that exists in the universe that, like the truth about what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what love is. And I guess for me, in the recent years, it's been about discovering God outside of religion, and looking for the truth based on what I see God as, which is a being that is completely 100% in truth. Whereas human beings, we're still quite flawed. So when we say we know the truth, we're sometimes coming through a lot of filters. So I guess it's an absolute truth on some degree, or some kind of basis of absolute truth that I'm kind of seeking to understand. That includes the truth about myself and about others, about the world, all that kind of thing. So Yeah.
Yeah, there definitely can be filters, not even to get too much into social media, but our entire life and lens of life that we show to others in person or online is all through a filter. One thing that we've obviously not mentioned is the fact that you are an artist and a poet and spiritual. And you shared with me that from a young age, you were told art is not a profession. I think sometimes when we're younger, we have big dreams and they might be crushed, or we might have different beliefs about different careers. But being told that from such a young age, what impact did it have?
There's a bit more to it, really. My mum's artistic. My grandfather was artistic. My mum's a really great artist. You know, she never did it as a profession, and I think that's part of her issues is that she was in a generation of working class women who their choice was to be married or to become like a secretary. She chose to get married at a young age. She was just 17. And I think she developed a lot of bitterness, and still has to some degree, about not being able to be who she really probably would want to
Mm,
be if she had the choice. So she was very artistic, and as I grew up, I watched her do various sort of hobbies, whether it was art and drawing and everything, knitting. She was always sort of doing different things. Um, and it was apparent from a young age that I was creative too, that I was artistic. My mum struggled with that. She struggled with that in general, with a sort of sense of having a daughter, and there's a lot of competition, I think, a lot of competitive feelings from her. So she would stand over my shoulder and sort of sneer at what I was drawing. So she didn't encourage. We had an opportunity to have a great kind of relationship based on sharing creativity, but unfortunately it went the other way.
mm,
So I did art at school, and I did art A level, but I struggled with my confidence with it. But there was a lot of messaging at home about, yeah, art is not a responsible thing to
mm,
do. It's sort of like you can't earn money from it, and also you're not good enough. So, you know, and I think even at school, because I went to a girls' grammar school, they were very much wanting you to go for the kind of more kind of what they would call academic subjects, you know, become lawyers, become this kind of thing. So there were some of my friends who went on to art, but I the confidence, I didn't even, I felt like it was irresponsible. That was kind of
mm,
my, what I was taught, that it would be an irresponsible choice. It
mm,
was not a way you could earn money or you could do anything useful in the world. I
mm.
had a certain role growing up, and certainly going to do art was not going to
Yeah,
match up to what the adults around me thought I should be.
it's definitely a bigger piece or a bigger issue. I had a friend growing up who was incredible at art and baking, but she had pressure from her parents who, not that it matters, but they were Chinese and they owned a chip shop, and they
Mm,
wanted their daughter to go on to do maths and, I don't know, become an accountant. But she had this great passion and talent for art, but just had to go down that route, because obviously they wanted her to be successful. And I have another friend who was amazing at art and then has now gone on to be a really good illustrator for Manchester City Football Club. So it goes to show that the environment that you are in and the support, if lack of or evidence of, can really impact your decisions and life. Similar to me, I picked a degree based on the job prospects, and the irony was I couldn't get a job in it in the end. But yeah, it's a shame that, like you said, that could have been a fantastic opportunity for your mum and yourself to really grow and have an even stronger relationship, but instead it kind of drew out those insecurities that your mum had, and she projected
mm.
them onto you.
I think it's not a small problem.
Mm,
Our parents trying to force us into being something that we're not. I would say that's an issue across the world, like, because it creates a lot of unhappy people, and
mm,
when some people become, you know, quite angry and bitter about it over time, and it creates lots of types of jobs that are quite uncreative and unfulfilling. And I've often wondered what the world would be like if everyone could really follow their passion, because I believe we're created beings. I think
Mm.
that creator is clever enough to create a range of people with a range of passions.
Mm.
I've got a friend who is absolutely passionate about accountancy. She absolutely, I mean, loves it. And so she does it in a really creative way. And I had an artist friend, an illustrator friend who's an illustrator for children's books, who her her money situation was in a mess because she doesn't want to do that stuff. And so I referred her to this friend who loves accountancy, and understanding she went to my artistic friend's brain, and she created a form of keeping accounts that was completely in line with the way my friend works creatively. And they had this incredibly creative board of stuff that was created out of it. So I think if everyone was allowed to really follow those passions and discover who
Mm.
they were, somehow I think the world would kind of work out, so you'd have the passionate carpenter who could provide, we'd end up serving each other in different
Mm.
ways. And I think living in a world where whether it's culturally or family based or society based, or the school I went to, like I said, when I told them I was going to do nurse training, which is what I ended up doing, which I had to do, which we'll go into why I did to do that, I got pulled into the head teacher's office. Well, you're brighter than that. Why are you doing nursing? You should be doing a degree. And in those days, I couldn't turn around and say, well, actually, I need to leave home for my sanity because my family life is insane, and if I stay there, I'm going to not survive. I couldn't turn around and say that. I had to find a career that would allow me the independence to kind of try and grab a life for myself. But I do, and I think back to, I think I would have been an artist. I probably would have been a wildlife photographer traveling the world. There's all these things in my soul because my soul is hugely creative, and I'm passionate about wildlife and nature. And I think, I do have some grief about all the possibilities. I'm in my
Mm.
50s now, so I do have some grief about, and I know that I am one of millions of people that have some grief about what um, they would have liked to have been. Um,
Mm.
and we're lucky in a way. We live in a world where you can reinvent yourself
Mm.
again, and that's in the process I'm in.
Mm.
But I do think it's a big problem and a very sad problem, and we're
Mm.
generationally repeating patterns. And you know and my aim, like a lot of us that are on a kind of healing journey, is to break those patterns, including
Mm.
that one of just allowing your child to discover who they are
Yeah.
individually without expectations. Mm.
Mm. Yeah, even me now at 26, I have regret of not taking up the career that I wanted sooner, because it got to a certain stage when my mum said, Kate, you need to give this up now and get a proper job. So
Wow.
even, this generation is impacted by that. So yeah, maybe there'll be a day when that generational trauma being passed down doesn't exist, but
Not yet.
not quite yet.
Some. I think there's a more awareness, isn't there, about ourselves? But yeah, there's
Mm,
still a way to go.
yeah. Were there any other limiting beliefs that were projected onto you whilst you were growing up?
Many. So my childhood was crazy and very unsafe. The first 10 years of my life with two different fathers, my father and my stepfather. Both men were violent. My stepfather particularly was violent with my mother. And he didn't actually physically attack us, but the threat was there, and he definitely was the most intimidating. And we spent quite a lot of time, either for me sitting on stairs, kind of holding my knees, or in my bedroom, or we were hiding in the bedroom away from the violence going on. And but there was my mother, to cope, started to drink, and my mother is still an alcoholic. And so her mental health was up and down, and with alcoholism comes narcissism, extreme narcissism, and self-absorption. So, you know, my mum sort of, I guess, neglected to, and the fathers neglected to care for us properly, certainly emotionally. And my mum, that competition thing, had brought me up to believe I've never been good enough. And there's a great book on this, Mothers and Daughters book, about, you know, this is quite not an uncommon pattern when there's trauma as a child. But yeah, I never felt, I still probably still on that journey of never feeling good enough in anything I did. I became the grown up in the
Yeah.
family, caring for my mum, caring for my two younger brothers, caring for the men in the family. And I also had sexual abuse, which the first time was when I was only a year old. And I only know that because a few years ago a name was mentioned and my body told me. So I think if you talk about limiting beliefs, there's dozens around my sexuality, a lot of shame, just basically who I am, and a feeling of um, I shouldn't exist because I'm so bad and I'm so evil that I shouldn't be here and I'm just a problem. That's what I came out of my childhood believing, and I wasn't aware of it. I knew I was in pain, but I didn't know why. Um, it led to me having eating disorder, and doing a lot of self-harm. But so I probably could write like a long list of limiting beliefs, but I think they're the kind of key ones, in the sense of they're the ones that have had massive impact on me, and the choices I made as an adult, and the limits I put on myself, you know, and the sort of belief that who am I to go out and just be a creative soul and express myself and dance and paint and write like I always dreamed I wanted to. I went into nursing. I continued the caring role that I started as a child. So I think that is another belief, is that I kind of had no awareness of my own needs. I felt I didn't have any. So I
Mm.
believed that my role was to serve other people in some way.
Mm.
I guess I sort of felt like a thing, like a thing rather than a human being. Um, and of course, that involves, you know, people pleasing and all sorts of. It led to all sorts of situations, including sexual situations where I didn't know how to say no. Um, and I did end up being raped as an adult more than once, in different situations, including um, with partners, but not in a violent way, just um, not asking me, and then me not having a voice and just being able to kind of, you know, I'd be asleep sometimes and lying there. So it was pretty full on, those beliefs that really um, strangled my voice, I guess. You know, and my mum hated my directness and honesty, which is a quality I think of me. And you know, she would say, the truth, you know, isn't always good, Maxine. The truth hurts. You know, you've hurt me, and it would, yeah, it caused. I just couldn't do anything right, really, Kate. It was like whatever I tried, and I used to care for her, and I was in a kind of, I guess, fairly typical kind of patriarchal belief system of, um, I was the girl and I was the eldest, so I got taught how to cook and clean, and I was doing all that. By the time I was 9 or 10, I could have left home and quite adequately looked after myself. My brothers had to do nothing, on the basis that, oh, boys are no good at that. That was the statement. So, um, and so I used to do a lot of baking, actually, and for everyone, to try and cheer them up, and cook dinner and do piles of ironing, and I'd, you know, all that stuff. So it was exhausting, actually. I think even talking about it makes me feel like exhausted, because to put all that on a child
Mm.
is not good. And I have kind of grown up with a lot of the symptoms of complex PTSD. So yeah, so it's a bit of a full-on answer to that question, but there is always a context for false beliefs. There's always a context for limiting beliefs. And I think as a coach, when I was doing coaching, I knew that. So I didn't kind of go into therapy, but I think it's important to understand that you're not born thinking you're not good enough. It's because things happen to you.
Yeah. I just want to say, after you saying that, I'm obviously so sorry that these are experiences that you've experienced, and if anyone else listening feels impacted by what Maxine is saying, we will link some support systems for people to look at if they want to seek help. It's so much that you've gone through, and like you said, from 9 years old you could have left home because you'd become so used to being fully independent. And when you think about other 9-year-olds and the types of things that you'd like them to be doing at that age, it's definitely none of the above of what you were doing.
It's funny because 9, there's something about 9 that's significant for me, in that, and I've written this out as a story, but I remember my 9th birthday really well. I remember waking up, and as usual, my mum was screaming for her cigarettes. So that was my thing in the morning: get my mum's cigarettes, make her a coffee. She was always pretty grumpy, and that's probably partly because she may have been drinking the night before, or she's stressed or whatever. And I was getting ready for school, and I was getting my brothers ready for school, and no one mentioned my birthday, including myself. And I was waiting any minute for mum to turn into a good mood and say, happy birthday, surprise, here's your present. And it never happened. And I remember walking out the door, we lived in the country, and going to the school bus. And I remember turning around and seeing my mum on the doorstep smoking a cigarette, looking just not in a good mood. And turning around and waiting for her then. Every minute I was waiting for her to say, like, it's your birthday. And I remember getting on the school bus and just feeling so alone on that day, and so sad. And I went to school, and when I came back, she had bought me a crunchy bar because the local vicar was round, somebody we called Uncle Ron, and he'd come round with a birthday gift for me. And so then she knew, but she rushed to the village shop and bought me a crunchy bar. And the irony is that Uncle Ron was one of the abusers of my childhood. So there's something about 9 always when you say 9th birthday, and I guess I'm just telling you that story because I think for a lot of us who've gone through a lot of childhood trauma, that sense of aloneness is what creates the trauma. Because the situations you go through, we all go through terrible situations, but when we've got a support system, when we've got a mum that will hug us, or a dad that we can talk to, or an aunt that we can talk to, it makes a massive difference.
Yeah.
And I think that's how Garbe Mate describes trauma, isn't it? That it's not the events, it's you being alone as a child in the event. And I think that's probably some of the biggest grief, if you've had trauma, that you're going to go through, is that sense of abandonment and aloneness that you went through. So I think we're made to cope with so much. If you look at what human beings go through, whether we're in a wars or whatever, we're incredibly resilient. We're incredibly strong and powerful. And but when we're alone in it, that's when we really, struggle. I met someone through Mo, who you may know, who came out of Rwanda, and she went through all that of having to escape Rwanda, and everything happened there. But she actually was more together in some ways because she had a family that let her talk about how she felt. I'm not saying it wasn't traumatic, it was, but just the way of coping with it, having someone who cares about what you feel is really, really big thing. So, and I think, unfortunately, when you've had trauma and you've had to survive on your own, that's one of the traits of adult children of alcoholics talks about, which is when you come out of a difficult childhood, they've written this kind of laundry list of traits that you have, which are quite dysfunctional in the world, and that's a side effect of the trauma. And one of them is is you've got this ultra kind of independence to an unhealthy state. And
Yeah.
I'm still got that to some degree, where I find it hard to ask for help. I find it really hard to be vulnerable with other people. And yet, ironically, the moments when I let that happen, it's fine, it's good. But your trust is so broken.
Yeah.
And you're so used to surviving on your own that you continue that. And that's not a healthy independence. There's a healthy independence and there's a dysfunctional independence. Having loving support from someone, whether that is just in a group with adult children of alcoholics, which I've found helpful this year, where it makes a big difference. It teaches you to have more softness with yourself and more compassion, which is a key part of healing. So
Yeah. Oh, Maxine, that story of being 9 years old and no one remembering your birthday, but obviously the person that you said, one of which ended up abusing you, is just like, I really feel for 9-year-old Maxine. But like you said, we are very resilient, and you truly are a testament to who you are today. I think you wouldn't really, like, if you put all your experiences on a list and then put a picture of you next to it, you'd be like, wow, what this lady has been through and who she is today. Unpacking it, you're kind of like, oh my goodness, how, when you said you had to pick nursing because you wanted to leave home because that was the only way that you were going to survive, and trying to explain that to school. Yeah, there's just so much there, but it truly is, like you say, really does show your strength.
Can I just say though as well that I think like there are these beautiful parts of our real selves, my real self, that exist, and what trauma does, or is it kind of creates and this is what the ACA talk about, the adult children of alcoholics, is it creates a false self which you had to create as a child to survive. So I became, inverted commas, good girl. So I was obedient. I did the chores. I did I played the role. I would cook special meals for my mum and my stepdad's, thing. I'd bake. I'd do all these things. I'd even do I'm a bit of an entertainer. I'd do impressions and I'd do all this stuff. But I think in some ways that part of me is real, that kind of cheeky, fun sense. But then, we get this false self that gets created, and like I said, part of the grief to go through for me is, and the courage actually, is to let go of that false self, because what we don't realize is that when we become adults, we don't have to keep that false self anymore. But when you've been through trauma, it takes a while to even realize, that you're existing as a false self or selves, and that often involves becoming a chameleon. So in all my relationships, I'm a bit like, I don't know if you've ever seen that film, The Runaway Bride, with Julia Roberts. Oh, it's really worth watching. It's a funny rom-com, but it has a message in it. She goes to get married 3 or 4 times, and she runs from the altar each time. And then, of course, Richard Gere pops up, and he's a journalist, and he's trying to tell this story about her, about this runaway bride. But he actually sees her, like he sees her really. And she goes through this process of realizing that she has become the ideal girlfriend for each partner.
Yeah.
And there's this really bit at the end where, a bit towards the end, where the penny finally drops, thanks to some stuff that happens with Richard Gere. And with each boyfriend, she has this thing where, like, because he liked fried eggs, she liked fried eggs. Because he liked scrambled eggs, she liked scrambled eggs. So there's this clip where they show her trying out all these different eggs. Like, she makes all these different types of eggs. And then when she eventually kind of finds a bit more of herself, she goes back to Richard Gere, and she's, I like eggs Benedict. And when I watched this, I thought, that is so like me, and so like many of us, maybe particularly women, I don't know, but where I, like, my first partner, who was my son's father, very crazy on football, and one of my other parts crazy on football, and I became like interested in football, I came interested in football, or whatever it was. I had a partner who liked me to wear mini skirts. I wore mini skirts, whether I liked them or not is irrelevant. So, or all these kind of things, where you're kind of betraying yourself, but you don't
Yeah.
realize it. Yeah. So I think that's that survival, that creation of the false self as a child, compassionately, is what is we needed to survive. And one of the journeys of getting over trauma is feeling safe enough to let that false self
Yeah.
go, and to do anything and everything to open up to who you really are. So I'm getting a bit emotional, but creativity in the last few years is one of those things that I've rediscovered and realized it is so much part of me. And through creativity comes self-expression, and through self-expression comes knowledge. So it's a powerful medium. But I went to some talks earlier this year, and the person teaching said, just do anything every day to open up your soul. That could be dancing to some music you love. That could be doing what I did this morning, where I went down to the ocean and splashed. The waves are crazy because it's a wild and windy day, and it wasn't good for swimming, but where I splashed around and just let myself get wet and pulled around by the waves a bit, and felt connected to the real me for a minute. Felt connected to that childish, not childish, childlike, sort of, yeah, more outgoing person, you know. And for many years I've been quite subdued. That's been my false self. I've been quite dull, I would say. And I feel like in recent years I'm coming alive again in many ways. So yeah, and that's why I like the Adult Children of Alcoholics, is because they talk about that false self and how that was created, and about how we have to look at our laundry list, as they call it, of dysfunctional traits that we've learned and inherited from our dysfunctional upbringing. But then we have to reparent ourselves,
Yeah.
and we have to give that love, not continue to abandon ourselves, which is learned behavior again. So yeah, so I just kind of say, like, I am those things you said because I'm still here. But I do feel like I am very resilient, and I do bounce back up again. And there's some reasons why, and I've told you some things before. We'll talk about a bit more. But I think it's just something I want to say, is that do at least one, even if it's a tiny thing, every day that opens your soul, puts you in touch with yourself in some way. And it doesn't have to be anything big, because when you've got a lot of trauma, it can be overwhelming. You can feel like such a large mountain to climb. For me at the moment, it's like, what little thing? And then I think you need to start taking bigger steps as you go along. But I'm in that process still of feeling safe enough. I'm not quite feeling 100% safe enough all the time to let go of that false self. And I think I'm in the process of developing more courage in that way. But in some ways, it's kind of exciting because there's so much more to discover as well. Because I think human beings are much more immense than we realize. Um, yeah, I look at the world and I see what an absolute mess we're making of it, like multi-generational injury playing out day in, day out. I mean, you look at Trump, he's a very damaged human being, and you could probably analyze him a lot. But he's in a, uh, any of us, we're all kind of walking around kind of making a mess. But my view is, if we've made such a powerful mess, we have the power to put it right. If you flip that power in a positive way, each of us can take steps every day just to be a bit kinder, to be honest about our demands, our fears. The more angry the world gets, the more we're suppressing our fear. So yeah, there's just day-to-day stuff, how you interact with the shop assistant or the
Yeah.
person. Yeah, like those things matter, don't they? I think.
They
Yeah.
do. They create ripples. There's a lot of angry people out there,
Including myself sometimes. But I often, now what I try and do is go, hang on, what am I afraid of? Hang on, what's going on? Like, what I kind of pause and I go, what am I afraid of? What I'm feeling scared about? what am I demanding from that person, to help me avoid a feeling that's actually happening inside me, like whether that's fear or
Yeah.
sadness or shame.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that.
Sorry, I do go on a bit. I
No,
hope that
I didn't
wasn't
mean
too.
it like that. I
I'm
didn't
just,
mean
I'm
it
just,
like that.
I'm just quite passionate, I think, about this stuff and wanting
Mm,
to be honest about it. Because I feel like we can't change what we deny,
mm,
including personally for myself. I have to start seeing all my, all my mud, all my yucky stuff that needs washing off.
No, I genuinely meant thank you for sharing everything that you've just shared. I have a couple of things to say that relate to what you've just said. That when you become a caregiver from such a young age, it's very common to then go into a caring role, such as nursing or midwifery. And it's those types of job roles that are caring that can then end up in domestic abuse and abusive situations because of the caregiving and the not recognizing their own needs, and you can just immediately slot into that type of relationship because it fuels your learned behavior. And something else that I'll pick myself up on of calling you resilient that sometimes really used to naff me off when people used to call me strong and resilient, and I wanted to
Yes.
scream at them and be like, that's because
No.
I've had to be. There was no other option.
Yeah.
And deep down, I'm flawed, I'm weak, I'm,
Yes.
I can be a selfish person, I'm angry, I'm furious,
Yeah.
I'm annoyed, I'm not perfect. And yeah, you can call me strong and you can call me resilient, but sometimes those titles of people being like, oh yeah, you've really been through some really shit times. And yeah, you've really come out great. And I'm like, oh, thanks. Yeah, I have.
But I haven't though. I agree with you. I used to get so annoyed, and even now I do have some good qualities, but I'm still messy and I'm still dysfunctional, and I don't always tell the truth because I'm afraid of what people might attack me or judge me. I still want approval. I'm still, processing the loneliness, and I'm still, like you said, angry sometimes and judgmental, very harsh with myself at times. So I'm still in that process. So this is what I'm saying though. If we can be honest about that messiness and not kind of like, in some ways, it's kind of spiritual bypassing, saying, oh, you're so strong.
Mm,
When inside you're going, but yeah, but I still want help and I'm still feeling, stop, it's like if we get more honest about, if each of us get more honest about the messy parts of ourselves, then there's going to be less judgment. Trying to all pretend we're somehow perfect or good is not getting us anywhere. Trying to put on shiny coats on social media, like artists. If I see another young 20-year-old in a white floaty dress in an art studio that's got no paint anywhere apart from on the canvas, that's not real life. Like when I paint, my God, I've got it all over my jeans, all over my face. I'm like, I just kind of, it's a bit like that. In fact, those two images are kind of a good analogy, aren't they? Of you see these social media pictures of these young, beautiful women with their long flowing hair, and they're in these incredible art studios that we could only dream of. The actual reality is a lot of us have, we've got up, we're still in, we might be painting in our pajamas or whatever, and there's mess everywhere. That's kind of like real life. Like we're in the mess right now. Let's just be honest about it. Not to be judgmental with ourselves or judgmental with others, but just say we're messy. What can we do to sort that out?
mm,
For me, it's been about a lot of seeking answers that have come through various channels. But yeah, so thank
yeah.
you for saying that because that is so true.
Mm. I just caught myself calling you resilient and strong, and I thought, oh, that I want to recognize that because you are, but
Yeah.
also I can also recognize that there might be another person inside that screaming and being, like you said, wanting help and still wanting that community and still wanting someone to talk to. And, even though you've survived, like, and now you're getting support, there's still that messiness. We're not perfect, and
one of the things that's helped me in the last 10 years is I came across I've tried lots of different stuff right over the years. I've involved in new age stuff. I was a born again Christian. I've tried psychology. I've tried all these different things, okay. And then 10 or 12 years ago I came across something called Divine Truth Teachings, and they have been one of the most impactful things because it's all really based in truth and like being really, really honest, and also learning and educating in what real love is really about. Unconditional real love, not the addictive, codependent love that we've created in our dysfunctional lives. And and in there, the teachings of that, they talk about the three selves that exist at the moment, where you've got the real self, which in a way is like the yolk of the egg. Then you've got the hurt child, which is how a lot of us are living in a lot of the time, day to day. We're in our hurt child. So I often, because of my awareness has grown, I often walk through the day and I feel like I'm 3, I'm 9, I'm maybe 15, sometimes occasionally I might hit the adult thing. But like a lot of the times I'm in all my different ages until I heal that hurt. And then around that is the shell, which is the facade self, the false self, the one that we were encouraged to be as children for various ways. So it's that thing of at the moment living in all those three selves, and cracking through the false self, the shell, to get to the hurt child, to allow that child. So I recorded, because I work for the AC podcast, I recorded an episode with a trauma-informed coach, and she mentioned that when she contracts with people, that she tells them that it's okay if their trauma comes up. She tells them that that she has supervision, so that that person who's had trauma doesn't feel that she's got to take care of the therapist or the coach in any way. So she allows for all parts of that person to be there, and that includes that inner child, the inner child that, or the real self, and the inner child that's been hurt. So she allows that space. And that's kind of, I guess, what I feel in a way, bringing our messnesses is allowing for all those different parts of ourselves to kind of exist without judgment, and look to see where the changes need to happen, and look also to see where we need more compassions and more. I've been on the journey the last few years of like, who is the real Maxine? What should I do? And that's how I started on the creative thing. And then I met certain people, through those teachings, and I've met Darren, who we'll talk about later, where sometimes other people see more in me than I see in myself, and that helps me become really curious about that, like who I am, who I would be if I hadn't gone through that trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so yeah. So I think just allowing space for all of that truth to be in the room with compassion for each other. I've always wanted to bring politicians into a room together, all the leaders of the world, but in their pajamas, like no suits, just pajamas. And you just sit around pajamas, and you're not allowed to speak for a while. You just have to look at each other until you see the human across the room with their own story. I've got my story, but you've got your story, Kate. And each listener that's listening has got a story. So we're all very the same in some ways, aren't we? Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't connect with other perfect human beings. I mean, we definitely compare ourselves to other people's highlight reels, but I feel connected to other people's, not flaws, but I feel connected to you through shared experience. And when you're talking about sexual trauma and your relationship with your mum and being a caregiver and putting everyone's needs above your own, I'm like, yep, tick, tick. And whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I feel the same level of empathy for you that I feel for myself. And I feel I can't understand, I can try to understand everything, but I just feel like because I've also been through similar things, that I understand that part of you.
Yeah.
Which is
And I
quite
think
nice.
I think that's what's good about going to like groups of adult children of alcoholics, or I took part in a workshop once where we were all survivors of childhood sexual abuse. When you walk in a room like that, you don't have to explain anything.
Yeah.
In fact, you can drop your false self, because we all know, we all have some common understanding of the different pain, the different results of that hurt. So, but some of the things you've just said, I think, is a story of women.
Mm.
Um, and one of the things in the last 2 years that have come to light for me are the intergender wounds that I have, the wounds of patriarchy, of the role I played as carer is also part of the role that's put on me as a woman.
Yeah.
That is my role. And even sexually, my role is to please a man. That's a false belief. That's a belief that, you know, is part of society. And I thought we'd kind of sorted out patriarchy, and as such, what a deceiving self-deception that was. Because now I see it everywhere, and I think in some ways social media is kind of exposing it. You know, I see a lot of clips of men talking about women, and I'm like, oh no, you know. Yeah, they're really, really challenged by us wanting to be equal, sadly.
We were doing so well as well.
Yeah, and they're not, and you know, I have to and on some level I do have some compassion for the loneliness, because I do think men do feel alone as much as women do, but we feel alone because we haven't healed the wounds that would connect us and have. But at the same time, I think women are realizing a lot of things, and so we're stepping away. So that will create loneliness, because and something I really important I want to say is I have a son, and in the last few years, he's got a learning disability, so there's some challenges there anyway. But what's come to light is some of the results of my bringing him up. So obviously, I was a wounded child bringing up a child, so I obviously passed on some dysfunction to him too. And what I've realized is that mothers, we are part of patriarchy too, and we are continuing that belief. There's a lot of enmeshed relationships within families, so putting your emotional tentacles out and having demands on that child. And when you do that to your son, or when you make the boy the prince of the family, when you're continually telling him you're wonderful, when you're doing his washing when he's 26-year-old, you are part of the creation of the monster that happens, that leads to patriarchal men thinking they're entitled to have sex with women, including up to the point of rape, or where they're holding a rage inside towards their mother that they're then taking out on other women. So there's a lot of stuff about men need to change. We all need to change. And women also need to look at their own belief systems and the parts they're playing as mothers, sisters, daughters, friends, in feeding that belief system. And, you know, because we're all part of it. And I also continued that belief system where I put my son on a pedestal, where I kind of have taught him that he's more important than a woman, because that's what I believed. And it's only in recent years I've realized that I still had that belief system. So now I'm slowly trying to change that in myself. But that's an important part of this healing as well, is we over mother. We have to show faith in our children. We have to teach them the skills so that when they leave home at 18, they can take care of themselves physically, emotionally, mentally, and we're not doing that. So we've kind of gone from a generation where it was not spare the rod, you know, to parents that then overindulge their children, or emotionally enmeshed. So there's still wounding. It just has got it's taken a different take. So we think we're doing something different from our parents, but we're still doing something quite dysfunctional. And so I just want to say on that, you know, I was taught to look after men. I was taught to make them feel special. I was taught to serve them in all ways, in some degree. And I've created some wounds in my son that now need healing, and that makes me feel really sad. And I just want to say that because there's many mothers listening out there that also, and fathers with daughters, but cause I'm a woman, I'm just talking from my perspective, but there's a huge amount of damage. You know, mothers have a lot of responsibility with their children, and it's not fair either. It should be 50-50 parenting. It should be a village, I think, actually. But I'm having to take a really hard look at the damage I've caused in my own son. I think that's just something I wanted to highlight, that, you know, if you're a mother of a son, you know, I'm just saying that part of your journey is to look honestly at that relationship and the potential monster you might be creating. And I don't mean that sounds judgmental, but there's a lot of men who are very angry. And I saw some research recently about how many men admitted they think about raping a woman. They don't do it because they know they'll be in trouble. But there's that anger inside them, that willingness, that entitlement is there. And that's a big,
Entitlement.
big injury, a big entitlement injury in men. But as mothers, we're partly creating it. So I think, and I'm trying to remember the name of the book by Bell Hooks. Great book on patriarchy for men to read, but also for women to read, but really good for men. And I'm still in it, kind of working it out myself, but so I don't know all the answers, far from it. But when I think about the men that sexually harmed me, and the damage it's done to me, but also the belief systems that put me in situations where I couldn't discern what was safe and what wasn't, or the systems that as a woman where I couldn't say no.
Yeah.
It's messy, but again, but you know, and it's really sad, you know, as women that we're still struggling with so much sexual harm.
Yeah. I think it's really brave of you to share everything that you've shared, but the fact that you're saying that, you know, you're still breaking down toxic belief systems that your son has been brought up thinking. But when you said, you know, we're creating monsters, and you said it sounded harsh, well, it may do, but the fact that you are sitting in other women's shoes and you are experiencing that and coming at a place from honesty, I think it helps people who are also experiencing that feel less alone. And, you know, we're not perfect, and so long as we're aware and each day that we're taking steps to try and better ourselves and our children, then that's all that we can really ask for.
And you know, my mum is very dysfunctional, obviously, and she's caused me a lot of harm. However, she has her own story, and you know, I know parts of it, but she was a wounded child with no self-awareness. So, you know, one of my terms I don't like is the parents did the best they can.
Yeah.
I feel like I could say that about myself to some degree. However, maybe there were moments when I could have been a bit braver, or maybe there were moments where I could have been a bit honest, or maybe there were moments where I could have been a bit more caring or a bit more discerning, or, you know, I kind of, and I think one of the things maybe I'm different from with my mum is that I do seek answers, whereas my mum just stays in avoidance. Obviously, alcoholism is, you know, an addiction, but still, it's so on some levels, I kind of, it's very confusing as a hurt child to get your head around the fact that your mum, you know, like your parents couldn't love you or didn't love you, but at the same time, I can see in my mum somewhere holes of love, like, you know, vacant areas of love in her. And I think, yeah, but having a parent who's an alcoholic, who never, there are some parents that face up to their alcoholism and change it, but my mum never has, and she's, you know, she's still alive by some miracle. And it's sad, and I have got a poem that I brought with me today that maybe is an indication of my aloneness as a child with her, but also there's something in the poem about her own aloneness, in what was going on in the moment that I've kind of written down about. So it's a complicated web in a way, but it's very common threads, isn't it? Everything I'm saying, I know that so many people out there are going, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh gosh, you know, like, that they can relate to. So my story sounds kind of tough, and it is, but there's millions of people out there
Yeah.
that now understand some of the things I'm talking about, or all of them.
Do you want
Yeah.
to share the poem now?
Yeah, I can do.
Yeah, I feel like it
So
kind of
here's
flows when you mentioned it. Hear it.
okay. It's called Her Feet. I stare at the hard, callous skin on her feet, and I hate them. They repel me. I screw my nose up as I tuck them back under the cover and move to her chest. She's breathing, and so deep in sleep, almost comatose. She does not know I am there, or that I search the cupboards and under the bed for the bottles. She thinks I don't know. The glass sits on the bedside table with leftover aspirin crawling up the sides. Has she tried again? Or was it to prevent the inevitable headache that's coming? It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's going to be another night to fend for ourselves. I'll make the boys' tea. My heart keeps racing. I check she's breathing. What would I do if she wasn't? I'd be terrifyingly calm like last time and the times before. I'd make the call, make the coffee, and try to keep her conscious. I lean forward and whisper her name. Mum, Mum, are you all right? No reply. Mum, a groan, and she turns over and goes where no one knows. But I know where she isn't. Not with me, ever. I'm useful, I know, and I can take care of myself and her. I don't remember much else. Can you worship someone then, hate them sometimes at the same time? Have a desperate need for their approval, yet want to be nothing like them? She moves, and her foot falls out from the covers again. Her hard, calloused soul looks at me.
Wow.
That's it.
I feel like I've got a peek into what it is like to have an alcoholic parent. That was so not what I would think a poem to be, but that was something that I feel like everybody should hear. It was a real deep insight and made me feel like I could understand that experience. So I deeply thank you for sharing that. It was really, really moving and very powerful.
Poetry became a cathartic way of me dealing with stuff. So I started writing poetry probably in my late teens without really thinking about it. It was after my dad reappeared in my life out of the blue, and I wrote a poem about that. And I just want to say, though, that everyone's a poet. And when I write, I don't worry. And I've got an English literature degree, so I learned about poetry in all its pretentious ways that you can learn about poetry. And I kind of, I guess, partly rebelled against it because for me, poetry is about truth.
Mm.
And it can take any form or shape that you want it to. It's not about correct grammar. It's not about that. I know that they teach about
Iambic
pentameters,
pentameter.
the iambic pentameters and all this stuff. And there are poets that write like that, and it can sound really beautiful. And there's nothing. I'm not saying anything wrong, but what's happened with poetry is that literary approach has created barriers to people that think they can't write. And yet, I always one of my manifestations in life was to be a teacher for a little while, and I always said to the children, anyone can write a poem. And I read a 4-line poem out once about the Brighton pier that burnt down that my son wrote, and my son has a learning disability, so he'd written these 4 words, and these, like, I think it was 6 words, like fire, red, orange, smoke. He just did this descriptive thing, and it was still very powerful, and it was only 6 words. And I read that out to them once, and they went, "Oh, that's really good." And I said, "That was written by my son who has Down syndrome," and that helped them just to see that they can write. Because some of these, I could often would work with children that had difficult backgrounds, and I think self-expression is very much part of our healing journey, and whether that's through dance, through singing, through whatever means works for you. And for me, poetry is one of those forms that I think has the freedom to let you just speak as you want to. And I interviewed a lady called Charmaine Pollard, who is a poetry therapist, and she does workshops for women who've been through domestic violence. And so they all learn to write something. And she's got a book called Writing for Resilience, and some of the poems are shared in that book, and they're just amazing. And they're not by poets, they're by people who just live life and have lived through some difficult experiences. So to me, I think poetry's awesome, but when I talk about poetry, I'm not talking about the stuff that I learned in my degree. I'm not saying there wasn't good stuff in there, there was, but I don't want, there should be no barriers to the arts for anybody. And somehow in society, we've created a bit of a pretentious thing, haven't we? Like, to be an artist, if you're not in the Tates, then you're not doing it. Or if you're not a musician and you're not, I don't know, playing at the Royal Albert Hall, then you're not good at it's nonsense. We're all creative in some form or another, whether that's how you dress yourself, whether that's designing the latest iPhone cover. It doesn't matter. It's just like, I think it's a part of the human soul to be creative. And so have a little experiment and just write something and forget about the rules. It's just, yeah. And journaling, like, it's all part of that. I think journaling is wonderful. And journaling for me is sometimes drawing, sometimes sticking, sometimes writing, sometimes scribbling. It's not, there's no, I like the freedom of no rules. Like, just say it in whatever form that takes. Sometimes for me it's dancing, so yeah, it doesn't matter. Sometimes it's going out on the beach on a wild and windy day and screaming into the ocean, which is what I did this morning. So yeah,
I feel like I've learned what poetry is and what it can be, and I feel like you have just debunked a belief of mine, because when I think of poetry, I think of Shakespeare, I think of Wordsworth, and there was no part of me that when you were speaking your poem then that I thought, this isn't a poem. I was equally, if not more, moved, but it just still broke down that barrier of what a poem could also be.
a poem is a dance with your feelings and sensations, really. Because I wanted to be a dancer when I was younger. And for me, and I think I've written a poem about this, about the dance of poetry, or yeah, it's a poem about finding your own dance, something like that. It's a poem like that. And because to me, the the, the way I write poetry is very raw. I don't kind of think about it. I just write it, and it's kind of like a choreography of, a free choreography where you're just moving as you feel, but this time you're just playing with words. You're just putting them on paper in whatever shape or form you want. So if you want to move the end of your sentence to the next line, you can, and that's what poets do anyway. But yeah, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful medium, and yeah, all my. And I know there's been a bit of a backlash from some literary poets to do with some of the Instagram poets that are out there. There's a lot of Instagram poets at the moment, people that are just everyday people like myself who sometimes put out their poetry. And I did hear some criticism about that, about it's bringing the level of poetry down. And I just thought, what a load of nonsense. Who said where the level was?
Yeah. When I came out of my abusive relationship, I started a blog, and that was really cathartic for me. And so it's interesting to hear that you turned to poetry, and it's really nice. I think it's important for people to have some sort of outlet that if they do feel alone, that in creating art or a blog or writing or anything that helps them express how they're feeling. At the time, it helped me because other people reached out to me and said, either they're sorry or they didn't realize I'd been through that, or they'd been through something similar. And like you said, as you alluded to at the very beginning of us talking, is that when you experience trauma, other people's response and your support system and who you have to talk to during that time can help you get through that time. And I also started my own podcast later on, and I spoke about my experiences to other people who had been through similar and who were either more healed than me or further on their journey or less. And I learned from other people, and they helped me unlearn some things and find self-compassion. Yeah, it is in that community and talking to other people and feeling understood and heard that can really help you heal.
Definitely. The workshop I did an 8-week workshop, which was poetry based, and it was for childhood sexual abuse survivors, and it was an amazing 8 weeks. I didn't want it to stop, and so they would, share some poetry to kind of get you started. Sometimes a bit like what Charmaine does with her workshops, but it was so healing because, again, just that community as well, being in the room with other people that understood it, where that sometimes there was not even the need for words. And that's what's wonderful about groups, is any kind of workshop you do, and there's all types out there for trauma or for different things, and sometimes it's just being in a room where you're almost like you've already let go. You kind of sit down and you're like, I don't need to tell these people my story. Even we know why we're here. We all know we've got a story. We all know there's sadness and pain in that story, and we all know we're here trying to heal it. um and that's what's nice about the ACA meetings, is it's just this sense of acceptance and non-judgment and kind of um yeah, but also the appreciation, because there's different people at different stages of their healing. So when I first started going, there's a guy there who'd been doing it for 5 years, and you could hear about his progress he'd made, and that was encouraging. Yeah, and I really, and this is where I connected with Darren, who we're going to talk about, but like was this belief in creativity as not just to do with innovation and creating things, but also in healing. And it's why I created a whole podcast series about using creativity with coaching, because you can't always find the words, and also when you've been through trauma, you're very good at presenting something and still avoiding the real issue. So you can be quite disassociated, and I've done that. I'm quite dissociated from my own story. I can, whereas with arts and with creativity, it goes into the unconscious, it goes into the hidden places, it goes to the truthful places. And so whether you're doing it through painting, drawing, doodling, you don't have to be an artist to do that, by the way. You can do art-based practice without being an artist. And it reveals things, it tells you things, it helps you connect with things. And I think it's a really, really powerful medium, and I think it's accessible to everyone. And you do not have to be an artist or a poet, inverted commas, or a dancer or a singer. Um, I've got a friend, Bex Johnston, who is an amazing singer songwriter, and she writes music to help people connect with their emotions. But she's now a music therapist, and it's just awesome stuff. Like, it's just beautiful way of working. Powerful.
I also think life coaching came to me at an important time in my life. And we've not really touched on it too much, and it's not within our questions. But I'm interested to hear of when coaching, at what time in your life it came around and how it impacted your life.
As you know, I said I started off as a nurse and then a midwife, and then I had my son, and it became impossible to do shift work because I became a single parent, because I was like you, I was getting away from an abusive relationship, became a single parent and shift work and all that. So I stopped, and I went off and did an English degree when my son was young, and then I did a teaching qualification, and I started I did teaching for a little while, but I was more interested in the pastoral side of working with young people. I was interested in their stories, and I naturally had a bent that way, obviously because of my own story. I got their story. And so I started working with young people, and without realizing what I was doing, I did family support work as well, where we used brief therapy, which is pretty much the same as coaching. It was a kind of therapy that's designed for a quick impact, and it was based on asking certain questions. Sounds like coaching, yeah, and active listening. So I did that first of all, and I took some of those skills into working with young people. So it would be about deep listening, because a lot of the pain, as we've mentioned, with our childhoods, is about not being seen and heard. It's about abandonment. So when I work with young people, I knew it was very important. I had to be very present So I put my whole self present with them while I was listening, and listened with my heart, not just my ears, and with my sight and with all my senses. And then, yeah, come up with questions. So I started coaching without realizing that's what I was doing. And I also automatically used creative techniques. So I'd always have pens and pencils there and sticky stuff and all that. So if they couldn't find the words, because some young people, because some of them were, 11, quite young, um, so we would just start drawing, and then we would talk as we were drawing, or I would say, what is that, and ask them questions. So so it got to the point where I thought maybe I should do some training. It's actually a very difficult time in my life. And I looked for coaching training that I could afford or was affordable, because I was financially in hardship at the time. And yeah, I'd had cancer and I'd lost some work and stuff. So it was a difficult time. And I found, because young people was my bent, I came across the Mo Foundation, which, as you know, was set up by a family who wanted to help young people from less privileged backgrounds. And they offer coach training, as you know. They also offer a scale of, like, if you can't afford to pay the full amount, they offer different things. So I applied, and I ended up being gifted the 6-week course, and that was in person. And I came up to London. So before all the online stuff happened, it was in 2018, and did that 6-week training. And it really helped me understand some of the skills I was already using, but refine, and also learn about some of my stuff that I was maybe bringing into the room that I shouldn't be bringing into the room. Um, and I think so, learning that, kind of really seeing the power of presence, which I think is definitely part of coaching, and how powerful the right question can be.
Mm.
Yeah, and I had a couple of obviously had some coaching myself as well at that point, to because you need to see it from both sides. I think to become a coach, you definitely need to be coached to really understand it. And that training and being in those triads, where you have 3 people and you've got the you're pretending you're being the coach, someone else is being the client, and someone else is the listener and then observing. It's just amazing, like powerful stuff. And it's different from therapy, because I think there's
Mm.
definitely room for both, and I think now there's definitely not
Cohesion.
great cohesion. Yeah, and I know there are coaches who are now teaching coach therapy type mixes of things, fusion coaching. And I think for me, I automatically probably was already a bit of a fusion coach because of my life experiences. So, like with limiting beliefs, I kind of wanted to know where they came from a bit without turning it into therapy. So coming up with questions to kind of, I ended up having a client who was an artist with limiting beliefs about that, of course. And so through a couple of questions, she remembered that, what her mum used to say to her about her art. And just sometimes realizing that, without it becoming therapeutic, just realizing that actually she wasn't born thinking her art was rubbish. Things happened, and so it allows space for self-compassion. It allows you to see that you're not defective. Actually, some of the things that happened to you were maybe defective, not you.
Mm.
And it's created a false idea. But so I think it was really working with young people that kind of got me into that mindset of moving from being a fixer, rescuer, which nursing is, loads of nurses, addictive fixers, rescuers, and doctors as well. You've only got to watch Grey's Anatomy to see it in action. To actually go to a space where actually it's even more healthy for me as a coach, because obviously for someone who's been through what I've been, needing to fix other people is also a good way to avoid myself.
Mm.
And that's one of the laundry traits in the adult children of alcoholics. One of the dysfunctional traits is you can become an addictive fixer rescuer to help avoid. Hand up, Kate's gone. Yeah, exactly. And so many women have got this problem, and some men as well. But like, where we do that, and people pleasing is also another way to avoid our own stuff, and also to manipulate a situation where someone doesn't attack or judge you. So people pleasing isn't all like a nice thing; it's a dysfunctional thing.
Yeah.
Coaching is about stopping being the fixer and rescuer, and having faith in that other person to just help them dig out their own internal resources and help them, get a different perspective on things, whether it is having some self-compassion for their own story or whatever. And it's just evolved, hasn't it, coaching in the last 10 years massively, as the world's got more complicated, of course.
When I got my qualification, I couldn't afford it either, and I got my place gifted. But mine was online, so I can't imagine having. Did you have to travel each week into London?
No, we had certain weekends we went up there. The first weekend I was up there, I was living in my car. I was homeless for a couple of weeks, so that was interesting. But I think I managed to pull together enough to like stay somewhere really cheap. I can't remember how I did it, to be honest. Things just seem to align. Sometimes things just happen and you're doing the right thing in the right place. But that's also where I met Darren, because it was up where his office, where his office was. So, they had a meeting room, you could see all the people working, but we had a special space for the coach training. And he came in at one point and introduced himself. And that's when I first met him. So yeah, and even though I don't coach at the moment because I've had burnout, so I'm kind of not doing that. That's the threads all join up. That's how I met Darren, and that's how I ended up talking to Darren. Do you want me to talk about Darren a bit?
It fits perfectly into where we're going to go.
That's how I ended up becoming like the Association for Coaching's podcast manager, is because Darren was also one of the people that helped really get the Association for Coaching off the ground and continued to work with them until he died. So Darren Robson is it's him and his siblings who set up the Mo Foundation. Darren Robson was an entrepreneur, but he was much more than that. He would want to be described as an invisible hand. And when I met him at the coaching, we didn't really talk. I didn't even feel he noticed me. But I don't know when it was, maybe 2 years later, he approached me at some point. He'd been watching my social media posts, which I share, and I've got a blog called The Truth of It All. So he'd been watching me and he contacted me for a chat. And I was a bit like, okay, I don't know what this is about. And he does this thing, and he's done it with me, and he's done it with many people, where he sees something in you that you don't see in yourself. And we had a Zoom call because we were into the virtual world by that time. We had a Zoom call. I think it might have been during the pandemic. And he says, just talk about all the stuff you like, talk about whatever. And he sits there and listens for like, I don't know, 90 minutes or however long it went on for. And he's scribbling things down. And he said to me at the end of it, you're sort of almost a polymath. You've got so many things that you're into and you're passionate about and that you can do. So he then put me in a WhatsApp group of a few other people, some of which still part of Mo, I think. It wasn't all people from Mo, but it was other creatives who were, I would say, we were creatives who had our light dimmed, or maybe weren't fully expressing ourselves, and maybe we're not just creatives and creative thinkers as well. And we maybe people that maybe had visions and dreams for the future and about change and stuff. So it was a kind of a thread, and we were in this group for a while. So Darren was very much, and did this with, I don't know how many people, maybe hundreds of people, maybe thousands, I'm not sure, but certainly when he passed, the amount of messages, the number of people he spoke to, where he was what he would call an invisible hand. And he was basically in a very gentle nudging way saying, be more, be you, don't be afraid to be you. Sometimes I was quite intimidated by him. I do have still some emotions with men where I find it hard to stand tall. I find it hard to be myself. I'm still dealing with fear about men and the physical harm that's been done to me from them. But so yeah, it was kind of a thing. But I'd never been seen or like that before, apart from maybe one teacher I remember at school in a 5-minute thing from school. But I'd never thought, wow, I got seen, I got heard. This guy thinks I can do more, I can be more. And that's when I kind of started to think, well, okay, let me try and find out who that person is. I still don't think I am all of who Darren believed I could be, but it was through him that I ended up contacting the Association for Coaching with an idea for a coaching podcast series to host, because they take on different hosts. And then I got offered the job, and he was good friends with Miranda, who is the team leader of digital learning and podcasting meetings. So I had a long chat with her and I got offered the work. But so I ended up working with Darren through the podcast because he was one of the founders of the podcast. It was partly his idea, like it was with the Mo one, yeah, because he did the first interviews, didn't he, on the Mo Adventures? And he does very emergent conversations, which is a bit like what we're having. So the questions and the plans we had today have gone a bit awry, but he touched my life in a deep way. I love working with him. He would be his passion for creativity. He was another what I would call deep diver, deep thinker, deep feeler. But Darren also struggled with his own mental health issues, just as I have. So I think I still miss him. And sometimes I'm still a bit angry at him and confused and then other times I'm really compassionate. But Darren ended his own life. And he was 50 years old. So he was at that kind of peak age that a lot of men go for attempts, either attempt or commit suicide. And the reason I wanted to talk about that today as well, I know it's Suicide Awareness Day coming up soon. We're in early September when we're recording, coming up in September. And the theme for this year is to start the conversation, to have the conversation about suicide. And my feeling in my heart when you approached me was, and I know that we checked in with Darren's close friends and family to mention this, but my feeling was that he kind of wants it talked about, because if someone like Darren, who on the outside is successful, had a loving family, amazing friends, was creative and did all this incredible stuff in his life, and he does leave a legacy without question, could still struggle with mental health and could still feel that it still had so much pain that he felt it was worth to not be on this planet. I think it's really important. I think he would want us to mention it, because he was very keen on us talking about topics that might be a bit uncomfortable, even if it was a topic of love. Whatever it is, he wanted these things spoken about. So yeah, so he was an incredible person, and I still miss him. And when we're creating a new podcast series, I know he would love. I often, think, and I often feel like he's around, kind of nudging me, or being. And in some ways, I felt a nudge to talk about the truth about his death today. So, and I'm only saying it because let's have the conversation about this topic. And even when someone does take their own life, it doesn't diminish who they were when they were alive. And I guess that's how I feel about Darren. That I wish he was still here, and I wish he was still having impact here, without question. But he did a lot more in his 50 years than many people do as well. And I wouldn't be here today talking about all this if he hadn't seen me and heard me. I wouldn't have been involved in creating some incredible podcasts and meeting incredible people. And we created a creative coaching fest, which was my idea with the Association for Coaching, which was 2 days of creative coachings demonstrating what they do. And while that was going on for those 2 days, I felt like he was in the room and he was clapping and he was speaking about it and enthusiastic about it. And my whole motivation when I did that was very much driven by feeling Darren was there pushing me along with it and feeling excited by it because he was passionate about the power of creativity, create change in the world. So even though it's really sad that he's not here, I feel like in many ways he is still here because of the marks that he left on people, with the inspiration and the belief he gave to people in themselves, with the encouragement he gave people, including what he did in the Mo Foundation, which I still think is an awesome foundation. And so, yeah, so he's a very significant person in my life. And I you know what it's like when someone passes, you wish all the things that you wish you could have said, you know, there's things I'd like to say to him now that if I'd had the courage to say when he was alive, I wish I'd said. But yeah, so he's hugely missed. But I think I feel like if he was here, he would be saying, let's not avoid this conversation. Let's not avoid, let's encourage men to speak about how they're feeling, or anyone. My mother tried to commit suicide quite a few times when I was a child, so it hit me very personally when he went. Because I know what it's like to be the child as well of a parent who doesn't want to be here anymore, and that's deeply painful. So I do feel hugely for Darren's children as well. But at the same time, he was in my life, and I'm grateful for that. And I know that he impacted a lot of people. So yeah, so in his honor, let's have these conversations. And in his honor, we created a series about mental health with the Association for Coaching to help coaches be able to bring that conversation into a coaching session if they felt it was necessary. So we have done a series on exploring mental health with the Association for Coaching, and there is an episode on suicide ideation in that series. So if you go to the Association for Coaching website, or you find the AC podcast on Spotify or Apple, there's some episodes on that. And I think the episode on suicide ideation won't just help coaches. I think that conversation information there is for anyone who doesn't know how to bring it up.
We will
So
share that in the show
yeah,
notes as well.
yeah,
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I'd like to say a big thank you to Darren
yes,
for
definitely.
the legacy that he's left. The person that he wasn't is. He may not be here in body on the earth anymore, but his spirit lives on through everybody's life that he has touched. And even though I didn't know Darren personally, through the Mo Foundation, I found coaching when I was in a very dark time. And I think a lot of people did. And his legacy lives on through everybody who he has touched, either directly or indirectly. And that's just a testament to the person that he is.
Yeah. That's why, even though I'm talking about that, has obviously sadness in it. I don't feel, because I am very much feel well. I feel no, I feel life continues after this one. I know we continue in our spirit body, and I think so. For me, when I say I feel down around, I feel down around, and so just at the moments, like I said, when we're creating something, a podcast that he would like or something. So yeah, so I think and he still is in my mind when I'm having a day where I'm not feeling very great about myself, of where I can still hear that kind of voice. So of like, come on, Maxine, do you remember all those things I saw in you? Be that, do that. And I know that many other people have that same feeling. So thank you so much as well to his family for letting us share this today as well, because I really appreciate that. I know that's not easy. Um, but um, but I think any of us that have been through severe trauma or through tough things in life, if we're honest, we've had that thought of like, it's too hard to be here. I can't be here any longer. And I've had that thought quite a few times in my life, but I feel like still got things to do, still got places to be, and I still want to. I feel like even though I'm in my 50s, I feel like I'm just right at the start of stuff. Um, because I'm more aware of things now. I've still got a lot of healing to do. I struggle to get to my grief. I've got a lot of belief systems around emotions that are hard to break down, and a lot of that's about safety. But I think my faith is in there being a God who is a loving God, not the one that I learned from religion, which is not a very nice God at all, I must say. I think it makes no sense. God has to be better than us in my eyes, and so we've gone off track. But I always feel like there's a calling home to get back on track and be the incredible beings that we're meant to be. And you asked me to maybe think of a quote or something.
I was going to say, what's next? Because you have
Yes.
mentioned that you wanted to pursue an MA in arts at Cardiff. So I wanted to ask what you say now that in your 50s, you look into the future, you've got so much else that is next and is offering, you look into the future. What is it that you feel like you yet want to do? Obviously, alluding to the fact that you want to go and officially study art.
Firstly, I want to become a better person. I want to deal with my laundry list of dysfunction in the sense that the change in the world begins with me, in my, like with us individually. And for a while I went around like wanting to change the world, whether it was through activism or it was through whatever. But actually I was denying a lot of inherited and other ways of being that I've learnt to survive, but actually I've not been very loving to myself and potentially then to others. So, I've picked up some bad behavior in a way over the years, and I've been very unloving to myself. So I think my big goal at the moment is more self-compassion and gentleness with myself. I actually think gentleness is a part of my real nature. So the harshness is a long way from that. So I think, and that's a way of continuing the abuse, really. Certainly, that is my goal at the moment, is to stop that and to work on my self-compassion and gentleness and just slowing down inside. I'm very interested in community arts projects, and I'd love to do that. Did get onto an MA in arts, health and wellbeing at Cardiff University this year. Haven't been able to get the funding for it this year, so I'm probably going to put that off for a year. I've had a very challenging 9 months with some issues that have come up with my son, whose needs have become more complex. So I have had to put my life on hold a bit. So at the moment, it's about getting my life back on track in all ways and creating more financial freedom and things like that that can allow me to be who I want to be. Obviously, I want to do more art, do more writing, and I want to find ways to use all those things in the community to help other people. So there are certain areas that I'm quite keen to help, like women who've been through domestic violence, childhood sexual abuse, the areas that I know about, even eating disorders. I think working with women, young women, because I think to do it authentically, it helps if someone who's helping you has some idea of what your story is. So yeah, I've got a book idea in my head. I did write a book for young people a few years ago. They didn't get it published because I put it aside because I felt like it needs editing. So I feel like a few years on, I can go back into that and do it better. Yeah, I'd really like to collaborate with people. One of the things I've learned through doing the podcast is that I'm quite good at planting seeds and connecting people with other people or projects that I think will allow them to, a bit like Darren in a way, like allow them to be. So sometimes I'll finish a recording with someone and I'll go, have you thought of putting that in a book? Because I get a feeling in my gut of like, and then they'll often say, oh, what about that sometimes? But so I've connected, we've got a community of creative coaches that kind of connected with each other after we did that podcast series, and it was wonderful. So, yeah, there's definitely something about community art products or communities that I'd really like to do some work with creatively and use my coaching skills, of course, in that and a bit of my lived experience. But I think my own healing, none of that will work if I don't do my own healing work.
Yeah. I like when you said Darren put loads of people in a group chat, which are all artists or creatives that felt they'd had their light dimmed, and then put them all in chat.
Yeah.
I really like that. I need to join that chat.
You do, and actually some of those, I know one of them has definitely finished a book since then. One of them you know, because she's also worked for Mo, Maisie, and she did a podcast series with the AC, and she's been doing she's a singer and all sorts of stuff. So it's about finding your thing, isn't it? It's about finding what makes your heart sing, about finding what your dance in life is. One of the creative coaches that I work with, Pearl Jordan, who uses dance in her workshops. We've become friends. And on Saturday, I went up to Queen's Park Book Festival up in London, where she lives, and she has a book coming out soon called Dancing to the Rhythm of Life. So she's put some of her coaching knowledge and some of her lived experience into that book. So yeah, so that kind of, I've got my own version of that. But it's lovely to see people that I have met and see the seed planted, the seeds that have been planted sometimes that then grow. And I think, yeah. So I don't know. I'm always kind of, I think when you're in a transition in life, like my LinkedIn profile, I keep updating it because it's like as I grow, I update it and I tweak it. And it's also trying to find an authentic way of being yourself in the world without sort of, yeah, working with people that have the same values and that kind of thing is really important to me. Working with my own values and that's some of the things that coaching does, and it helps you look at your own values and what your why is or what your purpose is a bit more. So I want to do all those things, but I'm also a little bit vague about it in the sense of like, I don't want to put limits on what I could do either. So I don't want to be put in a box. I don't want to put myself in a box because I think a butterfly never knows how big their wings are until they're open, fully open. So yeah, I'll know.
Watch this
And
space.
watch this space. Yeah, exactly. And learn what being a loving person in the world really is about, and learn how to help people in a healthy way and not be a fixer rescuer. And but yeah, and just be my creative self really in the world and see how good that can be.
I'm
Yeah.
interested and waiting in anticipation of what that might be. But now, if there is a final reflection that you want to share or for people to take away, then feel free to share.
Well, I want to read something that I know everyone's probably heard before, but I want people to really listen. Okay, so it's the poem by Marianne Williamson from her book A Return to Love. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
I feel enriched. I feel like this entire conversation, and that quote included, has enriched my life. And if only I need to ball up all this energy from this episode and just keep it and just like take it with me every day and just like open it and just be like, oh, yeah, got it. Oh,
I think the other thing I want to say is that our healing journey doesn't have to be all serious and heavy. Like laughing at myself and my quirky ways, you know, and being a bit light in it sometimes is okay too. Like it's not one thing, it's not all sadness. Emotions can be sad, happy, it can be whatever they are. So just I think learning to just feel everything, positive and negative, is a good way to go. And yeah, and that poem makes me think of people like Darren, and it makes me people think of Martin Luther King and Maya Angelou, all these people that let their light shine and help liberate me, bits of me along the way. It's a personal experience of that, and so now
who are you not to be
I
brilliant
know.
and gorgeous and amazing?
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that just being your real self is enough.
Mm.
It's enough. and it's enough to serve the world as well, because being yourself is bringing light to the world. That's an amazing thought, hey? Yeah.
And that's where we're going to end things.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you so much. It's actually feels like I don't know, I feel more than lucky to have witnessed this episode and being a part of this recording. I feel like a thief.
Oh, when you asked me to come on, I wasn't quite sure why. But that's my small thinking. But thank you. And I feel, yeah, I do wonder if Darren whispered in your ear, but it's quite funny and put me out my comfort zone to come on and talk about this. But thank you so much. And I hope it's helped someone, and keep going.
It's already helped me, and it's great. Yeah, I feel incredibly lucky. So thank you, Maxine. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Podventures on the Mo podcast. I am Kate, your co-host alongside Alex. If after listening to today's episode you feel compelled to share your story, please email info@mofoundation.com. We would love to hear your story and have you here as a guest on the podcast. If you have been enjoying the Mo podcast, please do leave a review. It helps the team so much understand what you want to hear more of, what type of guest speakers you enjoy. If you want to recommend a guest speaker who you think we should be talking to, let us know. We will endeavour to feature them. If you love Mo so much that you don't ever want to miss an update, subscribe to our channel so that you will be notified every time a new episode comes out and you won't miss a thing. And don't forget to answer today's question.